much for being here for our second episode of
One World, One People, a musical revolution.
My name is Jenisa Castro,
and I'm a singer, actor, dancer, and teacher, and my goal in life is to change the world through my art.
And my name is Gregg Castro. I'm a teacher, singer, songwriter, and a proud citizen of the planet Earth. And my music is all about that. Let me tell you a little bit about our show. Each week we feature guests from around the world. We have interesting and entertaining discussion and music, my music. We present this show with the hopes of finding some common ground.
Yeah, in the hopes that we can begin to build harmonic solutions for humanity, begin to work together as opposed to working against each other to find solutions.
That's right.
For the world, because we are one world, one people. And also throughout this series, what we're also doing is we're taking donations, and 20% of those donations for each episode goes to a different organization, charity, or foundation. You can find the donation link in the description below this video, so please take a look, because today's foundation is the Energy Foundation.
And today's song is LA Air, and it's a humorous look at climate change.
And today's guest is John King, Minister in the Prime Minister's Office with responsibility for culture and the National Development Commission in Barbados.
Before we introduce our special guests, I'd like to give a special thanks to Mr. Basil Grant. Basil the Magnificent.
Uncle Basil.
Yeah, some of you might know him. Basil comes from Barbados, and he's entertained with us for years. We're very grateful to him because he's the one who first introduced us to John King's music and message.
Indeed, and we're so excited to have him here. So without further ado, and now introducing Mr. John King from the island of Barbados.
John, it's so good to see you today. And
we're so happy that you're here with us, John. We're very, very honored and very excited.
And all the way from Barbados as well.
Thanks.
I was just thinking, I wake up here on the West Coast in Huntington Beach, and my life is so easy and smooth. And I thought, goodness sake, John's been up for hours on the, in the islands there, and your life is filled with responsibility, being the minister of culture. Mm-hmm. And so, what's the exact title that you've got there?
So it's the minister in the Prime Minister's Office with responsibility for culture and the National Development Commission.
Wow.
The National Development Commission is really a combination of two entities, which would have been rural development and urban development. And that's basically what we've done. So we'll be taking care of conservation, we'll be dealing with the parks, we'll be dealing with monuments, we'll be dealing with repairing people's homes, waterworks,
wow.
You name it.
Wow. So, John, we know that not only are you a politician, but you also have a history in the music industry as well as a musician. I would love if you could tell our audiences something that we talked about in our previous conversation was this idea of how you feel your calling is really to bring people together. My question is, can you just elaborate a little bit on how, that idea and that journey progressed from your music and now to your politics and what that was like?
Okay, so let's take it way back to the beginning, so to speak. So I was actually born in Birmingham, England, and I would have experienced racism in its ugliest forms as a child. You're going to school and you have people spitting out racial slurs at you, and we don't have to say what they are, but you can imagine what it would be like for a 5-year-old. And you get it every day. You're going into school and you come out on the afternoons, and it's the same thing. Or then you have the stereotypical type questions when you say to persons that you're going to be leaving to go to the Caribbean, and you get the things like, well, do you eat bananas at breakfast? And if you live in trees and all of these crazy things.
Wow.
that experience can do one or two things to you. It can make you bitter. And it did for me for a very long time. But then as you as you grow as the individual, I think when you connect with your true self, and music would have been my refuge, and it gave me a chance to express all of those feelings, which I probably would not have been able to talk to people about. But through my music, I would tackle racism, I tackle classism, I tackle politics, I tackle everything that you can think about under the sun as a social commentator in terms
Right,
of my
using the
music.
music as a catalyst for that.
Having been able to express yourself in those ways through your songs um, is healing in itself, but it also gives you the confidence to go on to other things. And so therefore then the natural transition for me was, okay, I've done as much as I can with my music, but now you have to get to a place where your voice can be heard, but not just as a song, because a song can drift away over years and over time. But if you're in the place where you make policy and you're part of that policy, and that policy is change, that is
Right.
positive, then you can make a lasting impression on people's lives in a
Yeah,
completely
you're
different.
actively making that change for others.
Exactly. So that's been the journey for me, and I think it is out of that journey that you will find that I've taken on that role of wanting to bring people together. You come across people who understand that we are a human family first. First and foremost.
Yes, that's why we found each other, John.
We're a family. And so once you begin to understand that, your whole perspective on a lot of things changes. And so mine changed to the point where I gave myself this mission, which is to unite people, at whatever cost. Just unite people, bring people together, show them the things that we have in common,
Right.
and celebrate those things that we have in common, just as we celebrate the things that make us different. We must be able to celebrate the things that we have in common, because if we start off with a commonality, it is then that we are in a better place to appreciate the uniqueness also.
Yes.
And so,
We love your perspective so much. And John, we're going to continue talking about the universal language of music. I believe that's one of our next questions. But before we hop into that, I'm just curious, this may be just a question for me, but can you tell me a little bit about your start in calypso music and sort of what the feel of that music is and what it provides for your audiences?
Okay, so I grew up in a household where my mom, in particular, not so much my dad, but my mom, loves music. So from a baby, I can tell you that I would have been bombarded with Nat King Cole first, Dionne Warwick. I mean, it just went on and on. Tony Bennett, it just goes on. Great jazz artists and early R&B type stuff. So that's where I started. But as I got introduced to the music of calypso, for instance, I found that calypso music, when I listened to it and I began to study it, Calypsonians were singing about the problems in society.
Yeah.
Social, that's why they call it social commentary. And I thought to myself, well, as a young person, no one really talks to me about these things. Maybe this is the way that I can express what I'm thinking and what makes me restless.
Yeah.
Things that I, as a young person, are struggling to deal with. And I got involved. And then I started to write along those lines myself.
Yes.
And as a young person, I was never one who felt that I had to do everything myself. So for many years, a lot of my songs were co-written by an excellent songwriter by the name of Anthony Waldron here in Barbados. And a lot of the stuff that I would have produced over the years in Calypso that were social commentaries were written by the two of us. So it was a good synergy for many, many years. And a lot of the stuff that we wrote together has stood the test of time in terms of that. A lot of it is still relevant today because a lot has not changed. but that's where I got started, and that's what propelled me into doing what I do.
I love that topic, and that's such a good segue into my next question, actually, if you don't have anything you'd like to add.
No, I have so much to say, but I better be quiet.
Okay. But my next question is, obviously we'd like to talk about some of the music that you have created, specifically the song How Many More, obviously because that song holds a very deep place in my heart. In our intro to our episode, we were actually introducing one of our very good family friends, Basil Grant from the island of Barbados. And the reason why that song holds such a place in my heart is because he asked me, as you know, he asked me to cover it when I was 15 years old. And that's one of the reasons why I resonate with this song so much. The second reason is just because the message and the lyrics of this song are so moving and so deep and so relevant, not only to what was happening at the time in your country and on your island, but also what's happening right now in America and also in so many different parts of the world. Before I jump into my question, I wanted to tell our audience a little bit about that song, what it's about. It's basically about the human struggle. It's about, gun violence, drugs on the island as well. But one of the lyrics in that song I would love to share with our audience, it says, warmongers selling death in my land, getting rich off the souls of we children. Can you tell me when will it end?
Starving and too many hungry, too many homeless souls in the city. It seems like there is no hope, no hope. Too many big shots and too much connection, too many loopholes in Babylon's system. Oh Jah, how can your children grow? How many more, Jah, must carry this load? How many more, Jah, before we trod down Zion Road? How many more, how many more, how many more? How many more, how many more, how many more? Won't you hear my plea? I'm on bended knee. How many more, how many more, how many more? How many more, how many more, how many more? Rose up early this morning to the sound of crying, another mother shedding her tears. Oh Jah,
I'll tell you.
So good.
Thank you. So let me just give you a little background on that song.
Sure.
I probably failed to mention that in my early life, from about 18 years old, I used to work as a social worker in a boys' reformatory school. During that time, I would have come into contact with a lot of young men who were having difficulties in life and would find themselves before the courts, the juvenile courts, for whatever reasons. And it was our job at that particular point in time is to try to mentor them and try to turn them around and, get them back into society. So that was the background from which that song was written.
Right.
That song was written in 1996. A young man whom I would have worked with when I was at the school was shot while standing up at a bus stop waiting to go to a festival. And I was getting ready to release my album for that year. And, I just learned of his death, but this thing just happens in my brain automatically, and I write it down. And in about 3 minutes, it was finished. I went into the studio, and the first thing I said to my producer is that, the way I hear this song, it must tug at your heart. And what's the first thing I need you to do for me? is to just have foot drum in sync with a heartbeat. Wow. That's all I want. And we did that. And then we built everything else around that. And I said, I don't want a lot of orchestra. Exactly. I want people to feel this and to be in sync with them. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did. And so the song was written, lyrics were finished, everything. And we did it the way we did it. And we said we wanted just to call and response things that people could hold on to, whatever. Because I always felt that this song was going to find its own way. I've done no promotion of it. I've not tried to get it to any record labels, nothing like that. Just allow the song to do what it's supposed to do, what it's intended to do, and that is to jog the consciousness of people where gun violence is concerned.
Right.
And some of the other things our young people face in this world. And I'm happy that it's doing that, but I'm sad that in 2020 that the situation has not changed. Right. That the song is still as relevant in 1996 as it is in 2020.
What a good story, John. That was, thank you. Wow. You know, and what you said about the heartbeat, I know Jenisa is going to move on, but you could feel that in the drum. You feel that 16th note, that it's just that pulse that came out, right?
And
you could really feel the heartbeat of humanity.
Yeah.
And it spoke for itself. It had a voice that resounded through time, through space, through cultural situations, and it was the heartbeat of the Earth Mother. It was, it was so deep. It knocked me out of my chair the first time that I heard it. To this day, I'm just
big fan.
You know, I think it's a masterpiece.
Oh no, so many sons lost in the slaughter, blood running in the streets like water.
What I wanted to follow up on in relation to that song is this idea that you talked about cultural penetration and forced migration. Can you just tell our audience what you mean by those terms and what you mean by them in relation to how you wrote the song?
Okay, so when we speak about cultural penetration, we're talking about other ways of doing things forced upon us through television, through music, through what other people's way of life and way of thinking coming in and eroding your own culture, so to speak. You know, and so for instance, I go back to the 90s and stuff. A lot of movies that would have been coming out of Hollywood that would have had huge success within the Black communities within the Caribbean would have been things like New Jack City. Right. That type of, you know, Boys in the Hood.
Right, you mentioned Boys in the Hood.
Just list them. Those are the images that people are seeing. Now, if you're in a small island and you see this big, powerful, mighty next door neighbor, USA, as being the land that you want to be in, you want to be like that, they've got it going on, you want to be all of that. It is easy for you, if you're not grounded in something, to mimic what you see. Mm-hmm. And that is part of the cultural penetration.
That works the same way in the United States. And I'm encouraged, though, John. I'm encouraged by what I see from the young people, from, you know, the messages that I perceive in the children that I teach, in the things that they're interested in the way that they think about life, and the way that they express the things that are important. You know, I hear more and more and see more and more conversation and concern about what is really valuable in life. You know, of course, we all have the basic necessities that we need as human beings, but at what cost? You know, do we give up, you know, the compassion? Do we give up the sense of humanity? Do we give up a sense of mental independence where we think for ourselves? Mm-hmm. You know, and I see that we don't. I mean, there's a tendency because of the media to have that happen, but the younger people are getting pretty hip. And I see the movements that's taking place in our country now with Black Lives Matter, movements for women's liberation, for all of the gay pride movement. Just one thing after another that gives me hope and encouragement that there's a new wave of understanding, and that's the wave that I need to encourage.
Yeah.
And
I mean, guys, there's a simple thing that I've been looking at for a long time. There's some things that are stuck in our minds that have been pushed at us for so many years that we take them on, and sometimes we don't even realize that we've taken them on to such a degree that they stop us from thinking. Right? So, for instance, this whole idea of survival of the fittest.
Mm-hmm.
Survival of the fittest breeds individuality. It does not speak to being connected to anyone else. What if we change that from survival of the weakest? What does that do? That puts us in a frame of mind that says we who are stronger or whoever have to now do things, put programs in place, just live our lives in a way that says it's about the survival of the weakest.
Wow. That's a total perspective shift.
Exactly. It's a monumental mind shift. You understand? And we will react, and that becomes our reality. But our reality at this point in time is still survival of the fittest.
When we talk about cultural penetration, we also speak about, you placed it in this terms, contagion. Mm-hmm. In America right now, with the Black Lives Matter movement and our social consciousness reawakening, the echoes of the past of where we come from, so many statues are being taken down. There's great controversy about whether they shouldn't be, what's right or wrong about it. And I understand that there was some controversy as well in Barbados. I was drawn to the attention of the subject because I read an article where there was somebody in one of the movements on the island that was calling for your resignation at the time. And if you could say a little bit about that and how it relates to the idea of contagion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me tell you why we talk about contagion. Like, for many years, there have been calls for the removal of Nelson's statue from where it stands. This started in the 60s, with different people agitating to have it moved. At the point in time, it was called Trafalgar Square. And that's where it was. But you have to remember that it was placed there by persons who were in control of the island at that particular time, right? So we were a colony at that particular point in time. In the mid-2000s, Trafalgar Square was renamed Heroes Square.
Mm-hmm.
That started the protests all over again, because the question was asked, whose hero is he?
Right.
So you have a new consciousness about who our heroes are. And that didn't get a lot of traction either. Black Lives Matter comes along in 2020. And right away, people are bombarded by pictures of persons pulling statues down, just pulling them down. The unfortunate incident of George Floyd triggers this. But this is more of a deep-rooted problem.
Right.
Right? But in Barbados, we don't have that problem with police and citizens because, one, we are predominantly a Black country. That's the reality. And so our reasons for taking down the statue cannot be based on the same reasoning as the United States,
Right.
because what affects people in the United States in terms of their lives and how it is structured is completely different to how it affects us in Barbados.
Yes.
Right.
So the contagion that I talk about is really based on the fact that people are pulling down statues, and then you believe, right, so this gives me the right now to begin to just pull down statues too. Now, I was not saying that I was against pulling the statue down, because I am not. I am all for removing the statue. But I wanted people to relay why they are moving the statue, or the arguments put forward for moving the statue, to be based on our experience, not on what is happening in the United States, because our situations are completely different. And so why is it that, because that is the reaction to dealing with their problems, I have to now subscribe to the whole notion of just pull it down and throw it in the sea? For me, as the minister responsible for culture,
Right.
I have to be able to see the wider picture. And my position was, I would not be a part of anything that says just pull down the statue and throw it in the sea. We're going to move him, yes, but I say move him from Heroes Square, put it somewhere where you can still use the statue as a teaching tool.
Right, exactly. And part of what you said is that you can't erase history. He's part of the island's history and part of what made it what it is today.
And that's the point. Your history is made up of all of the things that you would experience, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. That's all part of your history.
John, this is a big topic for all of us, and I think it would be interesting to get your point of view from the island and Barbados. And the question is climate change. We have a lot of debate back and forth, scientific opinion, political opinion, popular opinion. It does seem, though, that things are changing, and we experience it in different parts of our country. How do you experience that in Barbados?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like to follow the science. For reasons, but I like to follow the science. And if science is telling us that if the planet becomes at least 2 more degrees hotter, there is a possibility that sea levels rise. And if those sea levels rise, there's a possibility that islands such as mine can be wiped out in the blink of an eye. That's what science is telling us. Now, I have to take that very seriously, because it might not be huge populations like, in the US and in other parts of the world, but 280,000 people, 300,000 people at max, that's my family.
Mm-hmm.
That's my country. And if it can be wiped off the map, and you're saying to me that things like greenhouse gases and all these other things that they're talking about are contributing to it, it is reasonable to think that with 300,000 people living on 166 square miles, we cannot be producing the kind of gas, the kind of emissions that are going to be that significant on getting temperatures to rise and in what could be devastating for ourselves.
But your island is the one who's being most heavily impacted by it.
Yeah. So like I was saying, we are not huge contributors to this problem. We're negligent,
Mm-hmm.
but we're the ones at the front end of being devastated if the world's major places do not take action.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's a huge problem. Having been a tourist destination for a long time, why do you think people like to come to the Caribbean? Because it's clean air.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Because it's very natural, pristine waters, these sorts of things. If the huger countries of the world don't see that as having value for the rest of the world and continue to believe that they have a right then to keep doing what they're doing without any regard for us. The possibility of us being extinct is real.
Right.
And I have to say it again, the possibility of us being extinct is real.
Now, on to more music. John, the discussion about climate change, it segues perfectly into the song that we're featuring for today's episode. And it's a song that I wrote back in 1969 called L.A. Air. Wow. And at the time, Los Angeles was in such bad shape that, I'll give you an example, we would have these red alerts where we couldn't go to school. We would have to stay in the house that day because you couldn't see half a mile. You couldn't, the sky, even the blue sky, it looked like the pictures you see of China right now in some of their places. And to experience that personally, it was bad. So this particular song is a humorous look at that condition, and it's called L.A. Air. It's the thing that you need. If you want to rush, all you do is just breathe. Because on a good day in LA, breathing gets you so high, you could water your grass with the tears from your eyes. And the story goes on, and I think it's very appropriate. So at this portion of the show, we'll give our viewers a chance to hear the song. L.A. Air, it's the thing that you need. Yes, if you want to rush, all you do is just breathe. On a good day in L.A., breathing gets you so high, you could water your grass with the tears from your eye. L.A. Air, it's the latest sensation. It's the #1 craze, rocking the nation. Out of New York and Pittsburgh and old San Antonio, out of Newark, New Jersey, Skunk Butt, Idaho, out of Squirrel Crap, Montana, and Kalamazoo. They dig it there so much, they're breathing it too. So come on, folks, just take a good long hit. Don't be shy, you see that everyone's on it. Because the air over LA is definitely the most popular thing since good old LSD. The LA air, it's the in thing to breathe while you're reading your paper or watching TV, while you're going to church or you're going wee-wee, while you're standing in line or you're staring at me, while you're wiping your nose down the side of your sleeve, while you're making your mind up that you gotta leave L.A. 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 Yeah. L.A. Yeah. L.A. This song is dedicated to the Standard Oil Company of America.
And before we go, John, I was just hoping something that you mentioned in our last conversation was your analogy on race and your analogy with the use of dogs. Can you just share that with our audience as a last ending thought here? I thought it was so perfect.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, right, that from the time we are kids, we are taught that dogs are man's best friend. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, people gravitate towards dogs. But dogs come in all sorts of colors. You have black dogs, you have white dogs, you have brown dogs, you have black and white dogs, brown, white, and black dogs. But we still love them based on the fact that they're dogs.
Right.
And if we can do that for dogs, why can't we do that for our own selves as human beings?
Yes, we love it. So, John, that's all we have.
John, that's a great conclusion for our show. I think it sums it all up, and hopefully we can have that point of view. I know dogs respond to love, and I know that humanity does the same.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, guys.
John, thank you so much for your time. We'll speak with you so soon.
Thank you, John.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
So thank you guys again so much for joining us for another episode. My name is Jenisa Castro.
And I'm Gregg Castro.
And this is One World, One People, a musical revolution. So be sure to join us again next week for another very special guest. And just as a reminder, we are taking donations today for this episode and putting them towards the Energy Foundation.
Yes.
So if you'd like to make a donation, the link is in the description below. Make sure you do that, and make sure you join us next week.
Goodbye, peace, and let's find our common ground.
Indeed, we must.